America spends more on defense than any other country in the world. While that might not surprise you, did you know that we actually spend more on military operations than the next 9 countries combined? In fact, America's military spending is so vast that half the time we have no idea what it's doing. With endless wars, tentacles in just about every country around the world, millions of personnel, and clandestine involvement in conflicts most Americans don't even know about, the Pentagon is basically Jabba the Hutt on steroids. That's why it's a perfect target for the Department of Government Efficiency. There's a war on ways to fight, so strap on your helmet. This is Project DOGE. The Department of Defense is the largest federal department, employing nearly 3 million people and spending more than $800 billion per year. Still, arguing for cuts in military spending has always been an uphill battle. This is because we're told we need every dollar to keep Americans safe from our foreign enemies, just waiting to pull off 9/11 Part 2. There's no question that national defense is an essential function of government. But how much of what the Pentagon does is actually defending American citizens? And how much of it is defending Europeans? Of the 29 NATO countries, the U.S. accounts for more than 2/3 of total defense spending. Well, what about other nations? I understand why France may not be able to defend itself, but Norway? Come on, they used to be Vikings. What happened, Norway? Doesn't IKEA make any flat-pack longships? China spends about half of what we do on its military, despite having a much larger population. Russia, that global military powerhouse that everyone is afraid of right now, spends about 20%. Do we really need all this money to keep America safe? Almost certainly not. Here's a big question. Does the sheer size and scope of our military operations lead to less accountability? Does it make us less safe from real threats to national security? In fact, the Pentagon itself claims not to know where much of the money taxpayers entrusted them is going. Failing its 7th audit in a row, the Pentagon cannot account for about $200 billion of its budget.
Nearly $1 trillion of budget, they can't even tell you where it goes. So I think part of this is exposing for the public the extent of that rot and waste.
Why is it that this organization that is the most well-funded department out of anyone in our government can't pass an audit and doesn't have a calculator?
So it's a big answer again. I gave you the IT backbone, but the scale is massive, right? So that's your point.
Do you feel like these are unfair questions of somebody within a department of that size and scope?
I
think you
have a particular thing you really want to talk about and you're asking me other questions, but I don't think it's unfair to ask me about the audit. It's absolutely the case that the United States military should be able to pass an audit, and we've got to be on that pathway to get there.
What I would suggest is that the audit that they have in the military doesn't really look at whether or not there's efficacy. It's just whether they got delivered the thing that they ordered. And
that is any audit. That is any audit. That is true.
But generally, those audits aren't $400 billion for Raytheon and $1.7 trillion for a plane that doesn't seem to be doing. Like, there is a lot of waste, fraud, and abuse.
100 billion here, 100 billion there. Pretty soon, we're talking about real money. If you or I forgot to claim a few $1,000s of income on our taxes, you can bet that the IRS will soon come a-knockin'. So why do we tolerate it when a government department, particularly one so essential, misplaces hundreds of billions of dollars? Your guess is as good as mine. The issue of the military being careless with our tax dollars is hardly a new one, and the Pentagon has continually resisted fiscal accountability. That's because for too long the military has been given a blank check to do whatever it likes, whether or not it serves America's interests. You may be old enough to remember the boondoggle that was the war in Afghanistan. Despite the lack of a clear victory condition or exit strategy, the U.S. poured money into that war like it was going out of style. which of course, wars never will.
I mean, I don't think we have enough money to be paying to build and rebuild and build and rebuild Afghanistan. The president's right, and I think the people agree with him. Let's rebuild America. Let's spend that money here at home.
For 20 years, the military spent an average of $300 million a day, totaling more than $2 trillion. At the end of all that time, what do we have to show for it, apart from the thousands of lost lives of our men and women in uniform, in a country that is more corrupt and broken than it was 2 decades ago? But even when we're not at war, the Pentagon spends money on overseas operations that seem to have little to do with national defense. For example, the U.S. maintains more than 800 military bases in 70 countries. Not just places like the Middle East where conflict is ongoing, but in first world nations like Italy and Japan. These are holdovers from the Second World War that have never gone away. But why not? We can cut all of this without endangering American citizens. Historically, defense cuts have been a tough sell for some Republicans, who conveniently forget the natural tendency of government bureaucracies to waste money and grow unaccountably. But the Trump administration's America First posture is a big shift from the blank check spending of vanquished neoconservatives. And we are already seeing the return of the anti-war left, sadly silent during the Biden administration. Bernie Sanders, who has historically collaborated with conservative Republicans like Rand Paul and Mike Lee, tweeted his support for Elon Musk's call to cut defense spending, pointing to the Pentagon's long-standing lack of fiscal responsibility. And the Young Turks' Cenk Uygur was surprised to find Musk receptive to his offer to find $400 billion in cuts within the Pentagon. Donald Trump Jr. even responded in support of Cenk's suggestion that generals be prevented from working for military contractors to prevent corruption. And speaking of contractors, the CEO of major defense contractor L3Harris wrote a letter to Musk with suggestions on how to reduce waste and bureaucracy in military contracting. It would appear that there is a broad coalition of people all excited about getting military spending under control, rooting out waste, fraud, and abuse, and subjecting the Pentagon to the same level of fiscal scrutiny as everyone else. With the U.S. military not only responsible for the lives of its service members, but also the safety of every American, it would be hard to think of an agency where efficiency and responsibility would be more important. That's why the Department of Defense is an ideal target for DOGE to go in and clean house. And with a mandate from across the political spectrum, there is no reason why they shouldn't be able to do just that.